Hello, my name is John Bauchio, and I represent WineWise in Los Angeles. And today we're going to be talking to Ron Almgren, the beverage director at Hatchet Hall, and Hiram Simon, WineWise's founder. And we're going to be talking about the Loire Valley and specifically wines made from the Chenin Blanc grape and a couple of great producers that Ron has worked with at Hatchet Hall. I hope you enjoy. Hatchet Hall, I think, is a really an innovative take on kind of American cuisine that's sort of, wood fired and almost like something that you'd see out in like a country farm or whatever. But it's a little bit, it's quite upscale in terms of what's on the plate. I think you've done a really great job of introducing some kind of inventive international wines to that kind of approach to dining. Well done, and I'm really happy that we've gotten a chance to work together on these things. And we discovered early on that you and I both have a love for Chenin Blanc. And you, in fact, have worked with a few different ones and shown some with kind of great diversity. But I know you've worked with the wines from Joël Gigou and Patrice Collin and some others as well.
Yeah, I think that's really fun, and we're really blessed here, both food wise, but especially with like wine, in that our clientele is really adventurous, and we've built a lot of like loyal regulars and stuff over the years, and for the most part, they're really eager to let us sort of take the wheel and guide them to an experience or something that maybe they haven't tried before. Chenin's a great sort of grape in that respect because it isn't necessarily say as notorious or like as saturated as something like a Chardonnay or a Sauvignon Blanc or even a Riesling, but it's not too far off the beaten path or off the spectrum. So it's sort of like a nice thing that sort of will open people up to something they haven't necessarily tried before, but also that doesn't feel too off the beaten track or foreign or something like that. For me, I've always loved it. It was one of the first wines when I was really getting into wine that really caught my attention. I was like, this is something special that, I hadn't necessarily tried a lot of before. And it just always boils down to that intensity for me. I love that it's a chameleon, that you can show it in so many different styles and forms and do so many different things with it. But at its base, it always is a Chenin Blanc. It always has that sort of like intensity and concentratedness and this really like kind of savage beauty that I think makes it so perfect for food, especially the style of food that we're doing, which is a little bit richer, a little bit smokier, a little bit, shall we say, like heartier. It's not exactly light fare that we're doing here. So, that acid, that intensity, that really like in your face character that Chenin tends to bring really, I think, suits the food that we have here.
Very good. Now, Hiram's on with us as well. Hiram is WineWise's founder. Hiram, do you want to talk a little bit about those producers and the Loire and Chenin and how you come upon those guys?
Yeah, I'll try not to be too discursive, but Chenin Blanc is a subject that can occupy us for hours. I echo everything Ron says about its versatility. He used the word, it's a chameleon grape because it, rather like Riesling, it can be rendered in forms that are light and feathery and dry, or rich and unctuous and everything in between. It also makes very fine sparkling wine. And its greatest habitat on earth, I'm tempted to say that I could get shot for this. Its only really meaningful habitat on earth is the Loire Valley. And what people think of, I think, when they talk Chenin Blanc, the Loire Valley, are the famous names like Vouvray and Montlouis and Savenière. But these two particular producers, Joël Gigou and Patrice Collin, are in an outpost of the Loire that is really hardly known at all. There is a second Loire river. It's a Loire that doesn't have an E on the end, Loir. And if you look on a map, you'll see that it basically parallels the famous River Loire to the south, but it flows about 30 or 40 kilometers to the north and in a rather more sinuous fashion. And the vineyards that grow along the banks of the Loire without an E are all in the Touraine section, specifically in the département of Sarthe and Indre-et-Cher. And these two producers we're talking about, Joël Gigou and Patrice Collin, are in two different appellations. Gigou is in Janières. Janières is part of a larger, only slightly larger appellation called Coteau du Loire, Loire of course without an E. And then to the east of that is the Coteau du Vendômois, which is sort of centered on the town of Vendôme, which is a small market town. If you look at the map, you'll see that these two areas are pretty much contiguous. And I just recently drove from one to the other. And I have to tell you that really all that happens is when you go from one to the other, you sort of, you pass through a forest. Pretty much everything else about them to the naked eye is the same. Similar soils, a base of tuffeau, which is the sort of prevalent volcanic limestone that you find throughout the Loire region, a lot of silex, and then on the surface, a lot of clay. So they have that in common, but despite the fact that they have this thing in common, I think if you try these two wines from Joël Gigou and Patrice Collin, they will seem as different as night and day. And that's really the miracle of Chenin and the miracle of the Loire Valley, and the miracle of wine, you might say. Janières, to my mind, makes the single most distinctive expression of Chenin Blanc that's known on the planet. It's got the most soaring, most incisive, most penetrating aroma of any Chenin Blanc I know. Almost tempted to say almost any white wine I know. It's something utterly singular. And Gigou, who basically rescued this appellation from extinction in 1974 when he moved to the area, renders it in its most natural form. Collin's wines in the Vendômois are less perfumed, less sort of dramatically aromatic, but tremendously mineral and incisive and dry and sort of uncompromising. And they make a most amazing comparison with each other.
That's great. Ron, did you have at any, you had these both on the list at the same time for a little while, didn't you? The Janière and the,
and we actually went back and forth between offering it by the glass and then having it on our bottle list, something that I think we'll work with for a long time. And then the Joël Gigou, I've worked with a few of their wines, but the Jus de Terre that we have right now, probably been 4 months. We originally brought it on for a private dinner series that we were doing. The chef had done this really, really slow roasted and then ultimately seared chicken roulade, just like mushrooms and spring herb and nice, like rich kind of nutty flavors to it. And it was just, I mean, a perfect match. As Hiram said, it's just, the Jus de Terre is so expressive and nuts on the nose. I mean, there's just, you could sit and sniff on it for hours. Yeah. So it was really complex. The chicken dish was just like really rich and sort of elementally like satisfying. So I thought they're really, really nice match, but we fell in love with the wine here and found that it really works with a lot of different things coming out of the kitchen, a lot of the sort of, let's say, signature like flavor profiles that we kind of put on our food.
And has it created enough of a thing where people are going to that on just out of the blue, or are you still introducing it to people and saying, oh my gosh, you're getting the chicken, here's my favorite thing for that? How does it work at the table? I'm just curious. Yeah,
I'd say it's half and half. And we brought on their for Joël Gigou, we brought on their sparkling red first, so that was something that a lot of people fell in love with here. So I think seeing this on the list, it was sort of a no-brainer that they were going to go and like try that. But it is something that I'd say we work with more introducing it to guests rather than having them say cold order it off the menu. From this moment, haven't had anyone not adore it when it came out. I mean, it's such a unique wine. It's so expressive and singular that I think it's kind of hard to fall in love with unless you were looking for something completely different.
And on the Patrice Collin, how did you position that one? What was food wise? Did you, just out of curiosity?
Well, I mean, I think that one is a little bit more versatile, and again, as Hiram said, like that minerality really comes to the forefront. It can be a nice, like, sort of sip on a warm day in the patio wine with light bites. It can be something that'll stand up to like a richer, fuller dish just because it has that sort of bracing acidity and brightness to it. That was one that sort of sold itself. We were really surprised by how many people were like, "Oh, you have a Chenin Blanc by the glass," which actually got me thinking that we should be seeing it in more restaurants by the glass because it's such a perfect like food wine, sipping wine, bar wine, happy hour. Maybe I'm like belying my deep love for it, but that was one we had a lot of success with. We generally rotate our by the glass offerings pretty frequently. So with the exception of a couple offerings, the Castel d'Age Cava, generally we won't work with something for more than 2 or 3 months. But the Patrice Collin was always something we were really happy to pull back into the fold and be able
great.
to pass again.
I should mention that both of these producers are organic, which is hardly a big deal anymore, since in the Loire Valley in particular, it's the prevalent method. Both of them, though, interestingly, believe very fervently in plowing the vineyards. And you may think that that's a rather banal thing to say, but it actually is a very divisive issue in the viticultural world. But Collin, for instance, he plows his vineyards 10 times a year, which is a bit extreme. And Gigot has always used horse-drawn plows for his vineyards as well, so they have that in common. But their belief is that this is what unleashes the minerality in the wines, in that the microfauna are promoted in the soils because of this aeration that takes place, and that eventually that translates into these very powerfully mineral wines. The other thing I'd like to mention is that we live in a culture and a society where newness, modernity, the latest thing are highly valued. But particularly in the case of Gigot, his wines don't hit their stride until they're 5 or 6 or 7 years old. And I wish that we could wake up the world at large to the fact that white wines, just like red wines, often benefit tremendously from bottle age. In fact, Gigot kept back a few hundred cases of his 2000 vintage Clos Saint-Jacques, which is his flagship vineyard, and we are offering that wine on our list right now for anyone who's curious to see what a 20-year-old top flight Chenin Blanc from a really great vineyard in the Loire Valley tastes like. I highly recommend the experience to anybody who's brave enough to undertake it. I just want to say thank you, Ron. Thank you, John.
Yeah. Thanks, Ron. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Thanks for keeping us in such beautiful wine. And thanks for the opportunity to talk about this. This is a lot of fun.
Anytime.
Very cool. Thank you. Thanks very much, gentlemen.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.